when it comes to creating a new toy line, well, it's not exactly as easy as just picking something and producing it. A lot goes into which toy lines to do, what lineup would make a great toy line, because honestly, most toy lines fail. We tend to live in a world where, we collect evergreen brands like Transformers, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, but if you look at the number of brands that have been on the shelf in the last 40 years, the vast majority do not succeed. So, how do you know if a toy line or a movie property is going to work? Well, after the fact, there's obviously a correlation, a direct correlation between box office and consumer product success, shall we say. And yes, when a movie does not perform well, there's a direct connection to how well the toys or the consumer product, the merchandise, will do. So a toy line or a concept can look really great on paper, but if the movie doesn't perform, no matter how great the toys are, they're not going to do too well. Now, certain properties, studios, or rather toy makers, are required to do because it's part of a license. So if it's a Marvel movie like Eternals, which might not be as toyetic, Hasbro's still on the hook for making them because they're contractually obligated. Now, for the properties, though, that you don't have an obligation, how do toy companies choose which new properties to go after? Well, the obvious answer is they go after the toyetic ones. But the thing is, not all toys, or rather, not all movies, not all content is toyetic, and everybody wants a toy line based on their movie. Some properties are blessed with toyetic concepts that just work from day one. Characters wear masks, characters have cute sidekicks, etc., etc. These are all things that help translate content into successful consumer merchandise. But like I said, there really isn't a filmmaker or a content designer out there who doesn't want product. So a lot of times you will get content creators shopping around scripts to toy companies. And this is what happened with Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. All right, let me get something out of the way first. I know the movie did not perform well, but it's actually one of my favorite movies of all time. And this is probably because I absolutely love the original Valerian comic book. That was how I was able to learn French, was reading the original Valerian comic book, because originally it was in French. It was a comic from the 70s and 80s and was adapted. Now, one of the things that comes along with being a fan of Valerian is understanding the influence it has had on sci-fi. One of the things that, despite the movie not having good chemistry between the leads, they recreated the comic and the visuals, or I should say Luc Besson recreated them amazingly. You could pick up the comic book and then watch the movie, and it's almost a one-to-one as far as the visuals. So visually, looking like the comic, yeah, they did that. All right. Now, as far as call it the bantha in the room, and the fact that, well, Star Wars is a complete ripoff of Valerian. I mean, not even like a few things. Like so many visuals from Valerian show up in Star Wars because George Lucas was a fan. In fact, there's a very famous, illustration where Leia's saying there, "Oh, fancy seeing you here." I'll translate the French, and Laureline is saying, "They've been here for a long time, guys." All right, yeah, it was established a long time before Star Wars. And that's actually exactly what drove the studio to desire a toy line, because since Valerian essentially inspired Star Wars in every sense of the word, well, the idea was they would shop this script around to different toy companies, and a toy company would jump on it. Now, when we were looking at it, I was at Jakks Pacific, we were looking for toyetic elements. Despite the fact that I'm a fan of the property, we wanted to make sure that the script was going to have things like, giant monkeys driving around in cars, or scientists with laser eyes, things that would actually translate into toys. Now, I'm not saying that the script didn't have this, but you didn't really have kind of like the superhero costume change kind of thing going on. And honestly, I had just gotten burned on Avatar from Mattel. Well, not I did personally, but Mattel did, because again, they went after Avatar looking at it as a new Star Wars, which is how Valerian was being shopped around, even though it is an old Star Wars, but that's not important right now. And, well, this meant after Avatar toys for the first movie didn't sell, companies weren't really jumping at the next Star Wars, which is why Jakks Pacific, instead of going after Valerian, they passed on the script and went with Warcraft instead. And yes, I know Warcraft also didn't exactly turn the box office on fire, but it was looked at as not Star Wars. In other words, it's amazingly ironic that the reason that a larger toy company like Jakks passed on Valerian, the ironic part is that they saw it as too close to Star Wars. When I'm sitting there at the table reading the script, I'm like, you do realize that Star Wars was based on Valerian, right? Like, I mean, every visual from Star Wars more or less showed up in Valerian 10, 15 years earlier. And the fact that so many toy companies were passing on the rights to the Valerian movie. It finally went with NECA, who only made 3 figures. That wasn't exactly the robust toy line, but so many companies passed on it because it was looked at as the consumers are going to see this as too close to Star Wars. You know, we got our pop vinyls, the obligatory pop vinyls, but yeah, that was it. The one chance for, Valerian action figures, and unfortunately, we were only going to get a couple things based on the movie, nothing based on the original comic book, which, that's what a lot of companies do, like Dungeons and Dragons with Hasbro. They just did that. They put out classic product along with the new movie. So as a fan of Valerian, I was kind of hoping whatever company picked up on this. Now, the other ironic thing is because Valerian so heavily influenced Star Wars, there's actually quite a few Star Wars action figures that basically kind of give you almost an unofficial Valerian comic book toy line. So, you can grab Grand Moff Tarkin here, specifically from the Marvel comic repaint 2-pack, where he was in a green outfit, which is exactly how all of the officers in Valerian and Laureline dress. And in fact, one of the officers is literally a template for Tarkin. In fact, a lot of even the early concept McQuarrie figures are so heavily influenced by the artwork from Valerian that you could basically almost pick up the McQuarrie series and put that on your shelf and, throw in a Millennium Falcon instead of the Interceptor, and bam. All right, well, so the movie didn't perform as well, and it's probably good that Jakks passed on it. But still, the fact that it was passed on because it was too close to Star Wars, well, toys are not without their sense of irony. I hope you enjoyed this video and it was an insightful look at how certain toy lines are passed on by companies. Let me know what you think. Any other examples you could think of toy lines that probably should have been made that maybe weren't? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, and I'll see you guys in the next video.